Okay. In the absence of the board president and the vice president, as the secretary of the board of directors, I'd like to call this meeting of April 1st to order. In accordance with the board policy, specifically section 1.4 of ordinance number 190, a president pro tem must be elected by the majority of the board, which is a 3-0 vote, because that does constitute a quorum of the board, to run the duration of the meeting. And with that, do I have a nomination from any board member?
I nominate Ken Gertz. Oh, it has to be a board member.
It's got to be a board member. You wouldn't want to turn two of us over.
Jim Hernandez.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please. Diane?
Director Ellithorp?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Directors Sinella and Evans will be noted as absent.
Thank you very much. With that, Director Hernandez is now the president pro tem for this board meeting.
Taking a 10-minute recess while we,
And you'll begin at the Pledge of Allegiance sheet here.
all right.
Okay, thank you.
I thought of you. You don't have to change seats.
I like to be close to my board
That was
members.
great hitting that gavel. let
Being
me
the,
tell you.
being the senior board member, I try to be one of my peeps. Pledge of Allegiance. Ken Gertz, your name was called.
See if you were awake.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Diane, roll call.
Director Ellithorp?
Here.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Here.
And again, Directors Sinella and Evans will be noted as absent.
Very good. Introductions?
Don't need to adopt the agenda.
Oh, excuse me. Adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
And a second.
Oh, I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passed
Aye.
unanimously, Diane. Now, introductions.
Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce Ryan Kincaid, who joined the district on March 9th in the position of Systems Construction Worker 1. Ryan recently worked as a freight train conductor for the Genesee and Wyoming line. He is married to Edna. They have one son named Brennan. In his free time, he enjoys being outside, building hot rods, and surfing.
How does your son spell his name? I have a son named Brennan.
Brennen. Brennan.
Yeah. Very close. Thank
Sounded
you.
like you had to think that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, don't forget to look around. You're
Pardon?
rusty. Look around.
I'm sorry.
Tell me about your job as a conductor on the, was it the Santa Fe?
The Genesee and Wyoming. I worked in Bakersfield, so it was a short line railroad.
Uh-huh.
So pretty much the farthest we went was 20 miles. And we just pretty much UP and BNSF would bring in freight trains, and we would take the cars that we had to deliver to our customers, bring them empties, bring them full cars, and pick them up and bring them back to UP or BNSF, and then from there UP and BNSF would take them the longer distance.
So as a conductor, you're not the typical way I see my mind as a conductor, you know.
No, we were on.
Seattle, Portland, next stop, all aboard.
No, I was freight. So, I was on the ground a lot. I wasn't in the cab of the locomotive for a long time. So.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. That was pretty good for an
That was
old
pretty
guy.
good for
an old guy.
that was
That's pretty
good. Yeah. Welcome aboard, Ryan.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome aboard. While oral communication is walking up, oral communication? Yes. How do I know these?
What do you do now?
Is oral communications, anyone in the public that wishes to speak may speak now. Oh. All right, thank you very much.
Mike Hunsaker, 115 Equestrian Court, San Marcos. I'm sure that you're all aware of the governor's proclamation, executive order this afternoon. The crux of the issue is that we live in a desert, and we've been able to ignore that through a rainy century and a lot of imported water. The latest scientific study that I've seen shows that we're probably in for an extended drought. Previous studies I've seen said something like 100 years. The latest is 200 years. This is from the study of tree rings. It's sort of interesting because it's coming from the same data that predicted global warming. And this was known some decades ago. I think it is imperative that when we do our master water plan that we take into account these long-range effects, take into account the fact that we live in a desert. And I think also, since we are required to start cutting back on water consumption, that we declare a moratorium on building. You have taken the lead in recycled water, deferred payments. I think that the time for restraint of increase in population when there is not enough water to grow the food needed to support the population, that we start being more responsible in that regard. Some of the global warming advocates are saying, well, the big global warming and all the negative aspects will be coming 50 to 80 years from now. Then it'll be really bad. Well, you can't have it both ways. If you're going to be sustainable, you have to be sustainable now. And high density infill, adding population is not in accordance with these smart growth principles. So let's be consistent. Thank you.
Very good. Moving on. Notice to the public, the consent calendar will be approved in one motion. Is there any items that wish to be pulled from the consent calendar? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Action items, 2.1, approval of construction agreement for Prestige Academy Preschool.
Thank you, President Hernandez, members of the board. This project is located basically on the corner of Rancho Santa Fe Road and San Aleo Road, and it will be servicing a private preschool when it's done. They'll be constructing about 700 feet of 10-inch water main, and all engineering and inspection fees have been paid. The capacity fees will be paid per our resolution prior to occupation or release of utility, and we've received the bonds for the job. With that, unless there's any other questions, staff recommends approval of the construction agreement for Prestige Academy Preschool project.
Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously.
Thank you.
Unanimously.
Thanks, James.
Thank you. Item number 2.2, request for annexation of 4 lots.
If you could put that diagram up, please, Dana. I'll actually handle this one. I was working with the school district on it. It's kind of a complicated thing. You see the 4 parcels to the left? They need to annex it, and that's where the new school is going to be, at the top of the hill. The parcel just to the right that you see it's graded already, that was annexed by San Alejo because that was going to be homes at one point. So that was already annexed. The parcel to the far right, that is a piece of land that's a remnant that belongs to a gentleman that has a deal with the school district. When he passes on at some point in the future, the school district has an escrow that they then acquire the property. Because they don't own it right now, they can't annex it, and it's only a piece of property. So what we have before you today is they understand they're willing to pay all the annexation fees and go through the normal process. And where we reference in there, reach an agreement with them, the only part of the agreement is working with the school district. They want to go ahead and pay the annexation fees now, because that's how they get their funding. We will hold the funding, and we will be very clear that there's an extra $27,000 in that 114,000. And then when they do acquire, we then complete the annexation on their behalf. That does not have to go through LAFCO because it's already within the water district boundaries. The agreement that we are proposing is a very simple two-page agreement that says you pay your fees, we'll hold it, and we'll complete the annexation for you. So it's really no different than a regular annexation. It's just because of the fact that they don't own it, but they will at some point in the future. Council has seen the deed and the escrow instructions that they have for acquiring it, and we're satisfied that they will actually acquire it. What this allows the school district to do is to complete payment of all their fees. They don't have any obligation in the future. When they acquire it, they let us know, and then we just file with the state. It's a pretty simple process.
Yes?
What is the school district planning on doing with that property?
It's partly parking. If Chad, let me introduce Chad. If you please come up. This is Chad Conrad he's the project coordinator for the school district working on this. Is it just parking lot to the far east side, or is there buildings as well?
Far East right now is just, there's a residence, but the future is to be just an open lot for overflow parking and or just a small yard.
Small, and then they're part of one of the buildings does go out into the area itself too.
Is that in any way part of the commitment of what's going to go there in the future? I just asked that because, as we know, traffic is always problematic. And I guess what I'm saying is, in servicing water connections in the future, who knows?
I don't see it from that standpoint. I know from a traffic standpoint, they're doing additional turn lanes and everything else to accommodate it. I don't know the difference between the school load and the development load. Chad might be able to answer that, but I know they went through a full review process with the city. And they
Well, my purview isn't traffic, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm looking at the water.
The water, we actually have a water main that goes right through the middle of that lot.
Right.
Remember they brought before you the realignments, they put that big
Right.
temporary one out there. So the water service is actually already to the lot, so there's no issues with that.
Awesome.
Will these funds be kept in a separate account or in our general
We will,
funds?
we will track it as a separate account so we know what the money is there for.
Very good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Judge. With that, staff would recommend approval of the annexation and approval of the agreement once we get it finalized with the school district.
Should that be two approvals?
To make it clear, yes, why don't you?
Very good.
Move to approve number 1 and number 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously, both of them.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chad. Okay,
Item number 2.3, award of desalinated water connection.
that would be Mr. Gumpel.
Oh,
Thank you again, President Hernandez, and members of the board. So this project is probably pretty familiar. It's been before the board a few times, and just to give you a little background history on it, back in November of 2012 is when the water purchase agreement with the County Water Authority occurred here at the board. And then fast forward to about April of 2014 was another agreement with the Water Authority to build a portion of the project, which is about 220 feet of pipeline, with the remaining portion to be self-constructed by Vallecitos. On January 7th of 2015, the board also approved an agreement with the Water Authority for their staff fees, basically staff time. And the initial deposit was around $16,000, although I think the general consensus is it wasn't going to hold at $16,000. So fast forward to today, and March 16th of 2015, we opened bids for the remaining portion of the job. J.R. Phelan Construction came in as the apparent low bidder, the most both responsive and responsible bill at $452,759. When we did the budget analysis, we realized that we were over budget on this project. And as we looked at it, we looked at the original estimate that was provided to us by the Water Authority, which was back in October of 2013, which basically was about a $650,000 price tag to do that portion of the project. Then we finally received final design plans, though, in February of 2015. There's been several iterations and design drawings between basically that year and a half period that passed. So the original design contract or construction estimate really is no longer valid. With that, obviously the staff is requesting a budget increase of $670,000 and award of construction contract to J.R. Phelan for an amount of $452,759 for desalinization connection project. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
yes. Director Martin?
Just an overall question, I'm missing some numbers here. We're looking at awarding him 457, yet we're running 670 over budget.
Yes.
Well, what am I missing?
Okay, there's really no single smoking gun or it's really a combination of things. The primary thing is the budget increases in construction bids were quite a bit higher, but the material costs also came up. CWA's estimate went from 16,000, and now they're at about 70,000 is their estimate. So they're at 30,000 spent to date, according to their accounting, and they're going up to about 70,000. The rest of it is material costs. The valving cost for the valves were 80% higher than the original estimate. And because they're stainless steel valves, and there's only one available off the shelf in the U.S. The rest of them has to be shipped from Korea, and I forgot where the third place was. And of course, the pipeline cost. Once we got 100% design plans in, let's see, when do we get those 100% design plans? We got 100% design plans in December of 2014, and we had 4 iterations from CWA staff between 100% and the final change in design, which included a schedule change, which basically said that we had to make this connection by March of this year. So we got the design plans in February, we had to make the connection by March. So we had to rush order the materials, which includes piping, and also the valves. The valves are 80% higher. The piping manufacturer came in 15% higher between 100% and final. So the rest of it's really material costs and staffing and labor costs.
James, didn't we 2 or 3 months ago go through the same cost with something else?
Yeah, that was the
So
pump station cost.
shouldn't we have assumed that this is gonna be more expensive?
We had a suspicion it was going to be more expensive as we were getting the costs in. However, we don't really know the true cost until we get the bids in, and there's no budget cycle process to increase the budget.
Do we have any more of these pieces on order anywhere?
Not of this nature. These are some expensive, I mean, stainless steel valve, but we're talking a valve that's this big.
No,
Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah.
It's,
I'm just saying, if we have more coming,
Or
like
they
3
may.
months ago, we knew we had another one coming.
Yeah, no, matter
Not
of
much
fact,
you can do about it, we need it.
yeah. Matter of fact, we're kind of on the flip side. In 2013, when we're getting numbers, you may recall, the board may recall, we had the San Marcos Interceptor project, which came in almost $1 million underneath the engineer's estimate. This project is coming almost the same magnitude above engineering estimate, and that's only a little less than 2 years apart. So the bid environment itself is really a main driver in cost, and so one of the things that staff is making adjustments on is our construction projections, because our construction estimates originate from our master plan, which has historically been conservative. But now with the bid environments, they're no longer conservative. And you know, the savings that we saw back in 2010, 2011, they've been evaporated at this point. So, and the engineers are always about a year behind.
Thank you.
I'm still a little confused. The bids were opened on March 16th,
Yep.
and FELOC was 452, round numbers. Well, I mean, he bid the documents. Why,
you need to go.
why are we straddling?
You need to
with-
go to the full cost. Go to page 26 of your board
26.
packet.
Yeah, I'm on that full.
Well, it's all of the expenses there that are adding us up beyond what we thought it would be. It's not just Fallonk's bid, it's everything has come in greatly higher than what we ever thought.
And, well, then I do need, the construction side is 452. We're furnishing materials is not in his contract.
Yeah, so the way it worked out is when we met in late, so we got 70% plans in mid-October. And about a week and a half later, I don't remember the exact date, but late October, we met with CWA and they said, you need to make this connection in January or you need to make this connection in March. Well, the lead item for these valves, if we got a contractor on board, do a normal process and then go through a submittal process and to order these valves and order the pipe, we would never make any of the schedule. So the district went ahead and pre-purchased the valves and pre-purchased the piping material. This way we can make that March deadline schedule. But however, even with that, we still didn't get the final design plans until February. So we couldn't bid out the project enough to get it done. So we had to self-perform some of the works to meet that March shutdown. or else we'd be looking at another year delay before they would schedule another shutdown on that line. But the big thing is, so the materials are purchased, so when you look at that item on page 26,
Yep.
you have the construction, but you also have the VW furniture materials, which were $230,000. Our original estimate on that was under $100,000. But when you have a rush schedule and you also have limited supply, one of the examples that was given to me, working with both my staff and CWA staff, was there's only 5 pipeline manufacturers that they would even consider. 2 of them couldn't meet their spec. One of them was, the job was too small. So only 2 manufacturers bid the job. Of the contractors that we contacted, only 3 were willing to bid the job. And when we discussed with them, they basically inherently said the risk of working with CWA is it's not prohibitive for them to do the job. And the ones that did give us a bid, they told us, well, the risk is in our numbers.
Yes.
I've got it, yeah, just to clarify, the original budget amount of 640,000, did that have a construction component in it?
Yes, it did. So when we first got the numbers from CWA, it was right around 650. And we kept the budget about that, with knowing that their numbers were usually fairly conservative.
So what was the construction estimate at that time?
650.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and then, again, Director Oliver, as I was mentioning earlier, the design changed significantly from October of 2013 to February of 2015. So the original budget, even though that was set by them, probably wouldn't hold water today.
We also weren't aware of the reimbursement, what that total amount was to the water authority, $220,000 for design and costs. So there were a lot of snowballing things. But if you consider the cost of an average flow control facility, brand new right now is about $2.5 million. And we're actually being able to reuse part of our system. It's coming in about half. So it's, in the scheme of things, it's not that far out of whack what a whole new system would cost. It is high though.
The large expense, expense was due to the increased connection time as opposed to waiting the year you say.
It's a combination. When we got the schedule, so usually with the contractors and with manufacturers, the quicker you want things, the more you're gonna pay. So everything was a rush delivery to try and meet the shutdown schedule, which we met as of just this last weekend. So however, so you're gonna end up paying for that component one way or another. So, and then also the fact that the bid environment has changed in the last year and a half. So those two are the primary contributors, both material costs changed in the last year and a half, the schedule, which again, when we received the 70% plans in October, 2 weeks later, we're notified that you have to make the shutdown by January or March, which January was, a non-starter, so March was our target date. So it's really timing and schedule.
Well, it appears the dictate to Vallecitos was the March date. If we would have had a year to do this, would that have changed anything?
A little bit, yes. If the original 70% design plans held with minor edits, and we were able to give contractors lead time, the manufacturer's lead time, in which we didn't have to pre-purchase and rush delivery, it would have made a difference in the cost. How much, I couldn't tell you.
Yes, sir.
James, that's great. Explain to me again, 'cause it's been a while, the benefit that we have that no one else has, that we're gonna be able to get desal direct. Is that correct? That's what we're doing
Yes.
here. So what's the benefit to us getting desal direct versus everyone else is getting it from Twin Oaks after it's been blended? This would give us the opportunity to have it directly fed to us. What's the benefit, and why is the San Diego County Water Authority letting us do that?
Well, I'll start, Director Martin, and then I'm sure General Manager Lamb will cut in. But one of the big things is it's a drought-tolerant supply. So if there is a cutback with the drought or the new drought rules that are becoming around, we can look at our supplies and adjust what we can as cutback. I don't know how much we can do that depending on the amount, but it'll be roughly 30% of our supply from a drought-proof source is one of the primary benefits. And I'm sure there's,
Yeah, the other way they did it, Director Martin, was, you may recall back in 2011, when they completed the water purchase agreement between the Water Authority and Poseidon, we had asked as the, they gave us a variety of monikers, but the North County 9, where we were going to build it originally, what we did is we asked the Water Authority, and they went against historical policy, which is you don't get to pick and choose what pieces of the Water Authority system you use. Because you'd have somebody say, I don't want to pay for the ESP down in South County, I'm not going to pay for storage. So they've never allowed that. But because we got the whole project through all the lawsuits, all the permitting, all everything else, we said, we think you should give us the opportunity to buy directly. So they did, in fact, do that. So in 2012, the board took action, said, enter into a letter of intent, basically, and you will be getting the final agreement on the 15th for approval. So they allowed us to buy directly, so it's drought-proof. The other thing that it allows us is, if at some point in the future, the Water Authority takes the project over, which they can do after 10 years of operation, they would then take it over, refinance it, and redo the bond debt, which would probably lower the cost per acre foot. Because we're considered an owner, we would then have an opportunity to renegotiate how much the district wants to take as a direct take. So we're taking 3,500 acre feet. So let's say in 10 years, when the prices are crossing, which we think it's around 2026, if we take more from that, we will then be able to reduce future long-term costs, plus increase your local supply that we have direct connection to. We're lucky, and it seems like a lot at a total of 1.1 million, 1.3, whatever it is, but we are the only agency that can physically take the water like this and do nothing else.
Right.
That's really the biggest benefit. It hydraulically fits into our system. By reducing the amount that we're taking, remember, we originally wanted 7,500 acre feet. We just couldn't afford it at this point, just because the cost point came in too high. But when those two numbers cross, which with the action from the governor today might be even sooner, it'll put the district in good position to go back and do it. The only other party that can take it, and they have a lot of infrastructure to build, is Carlsbad. In the agreement, we also got a provision in there is that if any other buyer or original purchaser defaults or can't use the water, we as Vallecitos get the first right to buy it. So there's several protections in there. It does give us a drought-proof supply directly into the system. So if the aqueduct is down, water's not coming from the north, we get it directly into our system without worrying about the rest of the aqueduct system.
So what would trigger, once this is installed and it's in operation, what would trigger us being able to send John down to turn the crank and to give us water direct rather than sending it up to Twin Oaks the way it's going?
It's not,
What makes
everybody
that
else
happen?
is getting blended, we're getting direct.
Right, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, but how do we go, Cindy, they have to give us the keys and say, do what you want.
Yeah. Ed has a SCADA connection to it, we have a control valve, just like a water meter to your house. So in the morning, Ed will call into the Water Authority and say, this is how much I want per day, they dial it in, and we just get it straight into our system, we don't have to go out and do anything.
And you can do that anytime.
Twice a day? 3 times a day.
3 calls a day.
3 calls a day,
And we're the only ones who are able to do that now. Carlsbad will have the capability in the future.
yes, when they build the rest of their system.
Good deal, Dennis.
Yeah, so we're in good shape, and what it does, it gives the district, part of the direction that you told us is to look for independence. You're not gonna get independent, you're on the south end of the pipe, that's just the way it is. Unless we bought half of that desal plant, which would be great, but not realistic. So what it does, is it just puts the board in a good position in 5-10 years to expand upon a local water supply. And the water quality is gonna be substantially better as well. It's gonna predominantly be in the, we don't have a map up, we're doing the hydraulic modeling, we'll be bringing that to you guys in probably 2 months to show you where it's, but we're trying to keep it predominantly in the business area and the downtown area. That's where the water will be served.
And those expensive valves, they're reliable, so that this way we'll always have the ability to shut them off. That's the whole point.
And Ed has a key to it, correct?
I had a key to everything.
Oh,
Good.
how do we, thank you.
Any further questions? I would entertain a motion to increase the budget to $670,000 and award the construction contract.
I'll make the motion to, number 1 and number 2, to approve number 1 and number 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Approved.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
job,
you,
James.
James, nice job. And reports?
It's been a pretty quiet day.
Yeah, yeah.
You have before you, I received the first version of it from Maureen O'Connor. She sent it out as soon as the Water Authority received it. Maureen Stapleton.
Oh, there's a
Mayor
name-
Mo.
there's a name
Oof,
for
I
the
went
plan.
back to the 93
Thinking of the
drought.
first
The drought's
draft.
over.
Yeah.
Sorry.
She was at Harris.
Yeah, sorry. You have before you Executive Order B-29-15. That is the executive order issued by the governor today. There's some yellow highlighted areas, and I'll just take you to those very quickly. The first one's at the bottom of the first page. And you may recall over the past year, we've talked about how the water has gone from local Department of Public Health now to Division of Drinking Water. They're a regulatory body, state level. They impose, and it happens right then and there. They've done it twice in the past year of new things. You notice at the bottom of page 1, this is effective immediately. So once it gets posted and whatever the state does to acknowledge that, it becomes in effect. If you go to page 2, under item number 2, under the Save Water category, what we really don't understand, and this is why it's going to take a week or so to probably work our way through this, is it's mandating a 25% statewide reduction in potable urban water supply through basically the end of the water season next year. The end of the water season would be March 2016, but he's taking it through February 2016. And that's going to require us to be 25% less than our 2013 levels. What we don't know is when you keep reading that paragraph where the yellow highlight stops, these restrictions should consider the relative per capita water use of each water supplier's service area. Okay, now remember, are they talking about Vallecitos as the water supplier, or are they talking about the Water Authority as the regional water supplier to the area? We don't know. But it goes on to say that those areas with the higher per capita use will get proportionally greater reductions than those with lower use. We don't know if that means because San Francisco's at 55 gallons per day per capita because they don't have anything to irrigate, to coming down here, and not to pick on Mike over at Santa Fe, but you know what he's gone through in the press for the last 3 months because they have all huge estate lots. Well, that drives up the regional per capita demand. So if they look at the region and our regional per capita is high, we could bear the brunt of more than 25% below the 2013 level. We don't know. We just don't know. It came out today, so we haven't gotten any feedback from Metropolitan or the Water Authority yet, but I'm sure they're going to be feverishly working on it. Some of the other ones in there, they want 50 million square feet of lawns to be replaced. So there's some good things in there, and I think they're long overdue that the state needs to look at. You go to item 6. I've already reached out to the city and let them know and sent them a copy of this because of that one. Item number 7 is going to be interesting because it says anything new, you cannot use external water unless it's drip or microspray. So that kind of makes it tough to do lawns. So that could put the kibosh on that part of it. I don't know. You go to number 8. The board, when we adopted the 2008, when did we do it?
2009 was.
2009, when we did the 218 notice, the board adopted drought rates at the same time concurrent. We didn't want to adopt regular rates, then have to go through a 218 process to adopt drought rates too. The difference is, Tom has a rate calculator we can show you, but we don't know if it's really 25%, it could be 18%, it could be 31%. So what'll happen is the board will have to actually adopt and enforce those rates when we finally figure out what it is. We just don't know what it is yet. But they are basically telling you, put a drought rate structure into place that's punitive. That's the whole intent. I think we all know if the rate goes up $1.50 per month for the average house, that's not enough of a punitive impact to stop them. The last item, item 11, that's something that we adopted in conjunction with the city of San Marcos. Carlsbad has it, Escondido has it, and Vista has it. It was interesting, the model landscape ordinance for the state had to be enforced by the cities, but they weren't the ones who actually approved the amount of water for it. So we have an agreement with the city we look at anything like that, so that has to be greatly enhanced as to what they can and can't do. they're throwing everything except the kitchen sink at it to say you can do it, but gray water is good if you have a house that's not on a slab. Otherwise, it's pretty tough to use it. I don't think, the rest of them are predominantly exemptions. There's a lot of other items in there, but what we don't really know is some of it limits transfer of water and keeps water in certain areas. So we don't know what that's going to do with the state's declaration of how much water they're gonna send. Right now, it's at 20% from the Department of Water Resources coming to the State Water Project. We don't know if any of those other transfers or prohibitions is going to limit that amount of water coming down. So again, we're not really much further ahead than we were 2 weeks ago when I gave you an update that the Water Authority had, and we have those tentative dates, but that's really about it. I believe Metropolitan meets on April 11th, so we'll know before that what's going on. So as soon as I hear, I'll definitely pass it on to you because you won't have a board meeting yet. We'll have a board meeting on the 15th. The Water Authority will be meeting on the 23rd. So depending on what the Water Authority does, I may be reaching out to you guys because the first board meeting in May is Aqua in conflict. So it's in the 15th, we may be talking about moving a board meeting sooner to put it right after the Water Authority in case you guys have to take some action. But I don't know. So,
Is this a similar pattern that is taking place now that took place before with the drought?
no. What happened in the 91, 93, when we hit the March miracle in 93, that one, we went through a couple years of successive drought. Nobody wanted to pull the trigger on curtailment. Nobody wanted to do it. We went through that first drought without a uniform model. Nobody had a model of how we all do it together. That's why there was so much confusion back in 1993. Valley Center might have said this, the Water Authority might have said that, we might have said this. Nobody had that standard policy. What came out of that drought, because Metropolitan went from 10% in March, let's get March, I don't know my dates exact, but let's say it was 10% in March, and so everybody was saying 10%, but in San Diego, that was really only equated to about 7%, because ag cuts back first. Ag gets cut off right off the bat. They get that special ag rate, so when we get cut back 50%, they take the first brunt of it. That's why they get a cheaper rate. What happened back then was same thing. They knew how much water they had. They knew where their storage was. And we went from 10% in 130 days, less, or maybe less. Yeah, I think less. We went to 70% on ag, 50% on domestic. So we went from nothing to them adopting new policies literally every week because they didn't even have those higher levels of curtailment. We had the March miracle. That put everybody in a tizzy down in San Diego. That's what prompted the emergency storage program. That's what prompted the model ordinance. That's what's prompted all these different things. The thing that, kind of gets to me, and I talked about the last board meeting, is they know how much water they have. There's no mystery. They know how much water they have. We know how much we can get from the State Water Project. We know how much we can get from the IID transfer. There's plans right now, they're still assuming a full allocation on the Colorado River Aqueduct. Snowpack in that basin is down below 75% now. Well, you can't get the same amount as last year if there's less snow and less rain. They're getting a little more theoretically from the State Water Project. They only got 5% last year. Right now it's set at 20, but we don't know what this is going to do to that. So it's different in the fact that we have documents in hand that tell us what to do. It's not different from the standpoint that they know how much water they have. The big difference is we're even worse. We're down to 6% snowpack. Back then, I think it was 20-something. So the fear is it's going to go from these guys, because again, remember, this is now coming from the state. Last time it came from Metropolitan because they only got so much from the State Water Project. This time, it's the state starting to step in and say, we don't care how much water you guys have, you're going to cut back this much or more. So that's the difference. We're now being mandated by a regulatory body instead of a water provider. That's the big difference. And Met's got a lot of pull. Don't mistake me, they got a lot of political clout. So I'm sure they're aware of what's going on, but where it's going to land, I really don't know. The difference is going to be in our current policy, if Met goes to over 20%, that triggers the Water Authority to go to level 3. If the Water Authority goes to level 3, all of our model ordinances say go to level 3. Level 3 is where everything gets really ugly. Right now, it doesn't say that in there. So I think it's gonna be a determination on how much percentage cutback it is. If it's less than resulting 20% to all of us, we'll probably stay in the level 2, but up to 20% curtailment. If it goes over 20%, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's gonna trigger going to 3 or not.
Well, interestingly enough, there's a couple of items in here, and I left my dang list, as I went through, read this, you know, a lot of opportunities here. But one of them is, and we've talked about this in the past just briefly, but budget rating. Is there an opportunity to have us look at that, where we can budget the allocation of water for different uses, which would coincide with their?
Yeah, we've talked about water budget in the past. There's 2 agencies, or maybe 3 in the state, I know that do it. Irvine's the local one that does do it. Could we do that? Absolutely. How long would it take us to get to the point of allocating a water budget that is fair and reasonable? Year, 2 years? So yes, we can do it. Could we do it right now?
Yeah.
No. It would take a while to do it.
Greg, didn't you have that up at your
Yeah,
organization?
Rankin California Water District
Yeah.
instituted it about
Yeah, remember they went
3
ahead.
years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took over a year to put it in place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very detailed process, because you've got to actually analyze almost each lot individually
Oh,
and make a determination on how much hardscape is average, how much turf is average, and what the average size of the house is. And then what you do is say, okay, if it's a 5,000 square foot lot or less, this is what you get. End of story.
would it be beneficial to have somebody come and let us hear what they did, how they did it, what the benefits were?
I'll have Craig go over there and talk. No, we could have someone come down and talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could find somebody that actually knows about it.
Okay, yeah, just let me know who the point of contact would be, and I'll have them come down.
Perfect.
You bet.
What is that?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
actually called budget-based?
Water budgeting.
Water budget.
Water budgeting?
Yeah,
Water
I-
budgeting.
Yeah, we've talked about it before,
Yeah.
because we've heard it brought up, and I understand it is labor-intensive up
To
front,
get up front.
but overall,
Well, yeah, the trick is, and if you were at the conference where Tom spoke, we had a pro and a con water budgeting panel for Aqua. It was a year ago.
Oh,
Last Aqua conference. And, he had a full panel up there, people that do it, people that don't do it. And the only downside of it is things change at the house after you get a variance. And then do you ever catch up to the fact that the variance has changed? So there's good and bad. But it's like everything. Is that amount of bad enough to sway the overall benefit of it? We don't know.
and then the other item that caught my eye on 25, the Energy Commission, and with this ultimately going into effect, I don't see a date specific on this one particular item, but, and again, this has to do with alternate energy. Does that, it has to do with permitting, I believe. Does this make it any easier for us to look at that power generation on our main line?
Oh, no, we've looked at it, and we continue to look at it, but it's this much.
That,
If we put it in, the payback period's 30-plus years. It's such a small amount of power generation.
No.
What this is going towards, Jim, is if you've been following, like, who's the agency on the east side of the valley? The dam's gonna be built up there, Friant. Okay, Friant Dam is owned by PG&E. So what's happening is they're having to release the water at a much lower rate, because what happens is, I can't remember what the percentage of hydroelectric power is in the state that's made. They don't have the water behind the dams to generate the power. So what they're trying to do on this is give those guys ways to get water to increase power generation. The water power nexus is there.
Yeah.
If there's no water in the dams, they're not gonna generate the power. Where do we get the power? That's part of what they're doing here to expedite that.
all right.
Just to give you a rough idea, Tom did some very quick numbers for me. Assuming we're using production numbers and not actual use, our 2013 production was 17,300 acre feet. That was our 2000 number. If we have to knock that down to 75% of that, 25% less, that's 12,992 acre feet. And right now, not even including the heavy March, we're using 16,000 acre feet. So we're talking 25 to 30% cutback. to get to those numbers. On face value, We don't know if that's the way it's gonna be or not.
Well-
It's gonna be interesting. As I did mention last time, Chris is working with his conservation staff, with Tom. They're looking at all the top users, starting not this week, but probably next week. Ed's gonna start looking at putting, crews out at night. It's coming.
Well,
Go ahead. Director
again,
Martin.
that's 25% compact, yeah, that's gonna be the question, is enforcement. Because obviously, we're not gonna turn their water off, but we can charge them for the water.
You can
they
fine
use.
them and charge
that's
it.
the only way we can do is keep charging them.
Yep.
I don't see us really shutting off water meters at houses.
It's highly unlikely unless we 2 or 3 fines and notice and they just don't care, then I think the board's gonna have to have a process where we do terminate service. You're not gonna be able to have water running down the street, period.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
not gonna fly. It's not gonna fly. So that's
Well,
kind of,
It's interesting, I just came back from visiting my son in Portland. It's embarrassing. Water is everywhere. They're tipping it over, they're pouring it, spilling it. It's phenomenal how a little bit of difference in area is
Yeah.
tremendous.
Yeah.
So,
that's all I have.
yep, all right.
Enough good news.
That's it?
Yeah, enough good news.
Legal counsel.
Yeah, just to add to Dennis's talk and to address your question, Jim, it's unprecedented, this is totally different. And I think all you gotta do is read paragraph 2, just study that. It's 25, we've never in the history of California had a 25% declaration. The governor has mandated it. He's directed the State Water Resource Board, which was not even involved before, to mandate that this is how, we're gonna cut it 25%. So this is gonna go to Met, and then it's gonna go to the Water Authority, and they don't mean business, I mean maybe rather. This is just, it's gonna be, they're gonna I think there'll be some options at the local, as it filters down. But this is really, I think, from my perspective, is totally unprecedented. It's sort of gonna be a statewide deal, so what's gonna happen here is gonna happen other places and vice versa. So it'll be very interesting. I think, fortunately or unfortunately, at the local level, we're not gonna have a lot of discretion or control over it. It's basically gonna be pushed down, and this is the way it is, period. We'll see.
Yeah, we don't know. The next 4 weeks are gonna be very interesting.
Exciting.
I don't want to use that word. I did it in '93, and like I said, it wasn't exciting.
Our representative for the Sandy County Water Authority is not here, so I believe there's no report unless there's
You know,
something
all I
magic.
will give, I went down for the board meeting in Betty's absence last week because she was sick. Pretty much normal business, but they did have quite a bit of conversation throughout the day on allocations. But the difference was, last week's conversation was based on allocations Met thought they were gonna have. It didn't include this edict from the governor. So what they thought they were gonna hear last week and what we thought is, like I said, if it was only 20% from Met, we could make up with IID water, the transfer water from the canal, and it might have only been 11% to us because of local supplies. We were good. We could do 11% standing on our head, no other curtailments. This kind of supersedes, I think, what everybody's planned on for the last 2 or 3 months. That's why we really don't know what's gonna happen.
All right. Item 3.4, Encina Wastewater Authority. We have not had a capital improvement committee policy.
And we didn't have a policy and finance committee since our last board meeting.
Very good. And the board meeting itself, we went through, and I think we mentioned last time about the claim for the heater dryer, the final acceptance of the plant rehabilitation, and then we met in executive session over labor relations, and there was nothing to report there. So we're moving on from that one. Item 3.5, directors' reports and meetings.
I don't think any.
I don't think we have this week.
I don't have any.
Not
Big
since
bump,
last
but
board meeting.
nothing this time. Other business, any additional meetings? I did receive a notification of a webcast or a meeting going on for drought strategies. I don't know if that was just spam or somebody sending me something.
I probably came to me too off the left.
Okay,
I'm
we'll
not,
take a look, see if that really is something.
okay?
And I think that was the only thing.
Yeah, next week, the first week of May, there's 2 conferences, depending on what you guys are gonna do. There's Aqua, and then there's the water reuse desal.
Yes.
So I'm not sure how much they overlap on Tuesday.
Ah,
But if you do them both, that means you'll be gone Sunday through Saturday.
okay.
So keep that in mind if you're planning on attending either of them. I'm assuming you would have signed up by now, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a conflict if you're doing both.
Director's comments.
I have one when I get to the page, so if anyone else has one, go right ahead.
You looking for some pages?
Notes, okay.
Oh, notes. Oh,
I have a
good.
comment.
Good.
A couple of comments. I'll keep them short. We've all received a letter from Mr. Starbuck.
Yes.
Some of James's fugitive odors
Yes.
seem to be appearing at his house. Oh, they're Ed's, that's right, they're Ed's. And on the third letter I received, I said it's time for me to go out as his representative in my district and at least talk to him.
Oh, good.
And I went out and talked to him, a very level-headed guy. He says every occasionally, as a matter of fact, he hasn't smelt it since the last
Right, March
first letter he sent. And I saw his house, and as I looked over the fence of his house, I could see pump station number 1 right there. He's probably the closest property, I was gonna ask for a map, the closest property to that pump station. And you'll remember that that pump station was brought up at our last 218 hearing by a member of the public that was talking about the stench. And I've made numerous comments in the past 2 years about when are we gonna put more scrubbers out there, or when are we gonna do something, because I've sat in my car at that light and smelt it, so I know that occasionally it does happen. So he was a very engaging person, wasn't a crackpot, just very straight, and he seemed very nice. We had a great conversation, and I said, well, thank you very much. Here's my number. If you smell it again by the time I get here, it'll probably be gone. I said, but I'll look into it. And then a day or two after that, I happened to be driving past, I said, I'm gonna pull into the pump station and just smell. So I pulled in the pump station. As I walked around to one side, there were 2 Vallecitos trucks parked behind that. And one was the electrician, I forget his name, really, I'm sorry?
David Joyner.
Great guy. And he was wondering who I was and what I was doing back behind the building. I said, oh, my name is, oh, yeah, but he was very engaging and very interesting and explained what he was doing for the venting. What I hadn't realized until he pointed out to me is we have a gaping, the way it was built, there's a gaping 7-foot by 7-foot hole in the back of that building that we use fencing to close off. It's open air. And I never realized that, but we're changing that. Matter of fact, he was putting the venting system, the doors are on order for it. So Vallecitos is doing everything it possibly can to correct that problem, which I think is great. And I wanted to commend staff for being all over it. And I hope this gentleman doesn't call me in the meantime. Because I didn't say to him that one way or the other, I'm the elected representative, vent on me. And he did, but I think staff's doing everything they can do as long as we get those installed ASAP. I think that'll make everybody happy that drives past there.
Sure.
So that's
Yeah.
one. Thank you very much.
All right.
Second one, Aqua Region 10 Board. We had a meeting. Peter Swan retired prematurely.
Really?
And so we had a quickie meeting today on the phone to name his predecessor. There were 2 candidates, Larry McKinney and Kathy Green. And on the phone, the vote was taken, Larry is our new representative. And then his person on the board may or may not, as the VP, or whatever he is right now, will be Kathy probably, but that'll wait for the Aqua meeting.
Where's he from?
Larry is from,
Sapa? Molten to go?
no,
Used to be in the
what's MW,
Well, he's on the Met board, but I think
Mesa?
from,
Mesa.
Mesa?
Mesa.
No,
Mason.
Molten Miguel.
And Kathy was from Orange County, so she'll be going as the alternate, I'm sure, because they didn't really say it on the phone, but it seemed like she was the alternate. But it had to be an Orange County
Yeah, Orange
candidate.
County, right.
So it was, and we'll discuss more at Aqua. But that was very interesting. I was sorry to hear Pierce Swan leave, because I only really spent time with them at the one meeting we had down here a month or two ago, and generally just full of information.
Oh.
That gathered in a matter of 2 hours what, took him years to put together, I'm sure. Interesting. And he liked wine. I don't drink wine, so that didn't bother me. He brings his own wine with him. He's like, oh, okay, cool. So that's all I have, and thank you, James, for telling me the fugitive voter comment, because I used that with Mr. Starbuck many times. I said, what we're talking here is fugitive voters. They're escaping from somewhere. So I was all over it. He actually laughed when I said that.
Well, good.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I think with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.